because I hate behind the podium. So hi, my name is Mike Kinman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the rector, which is the senior pastor here at All Saints Church. I know the most important announcement I have to make tonight is where the bathrooms are. If they haven't told you this already, it's just right there, sort of around that corner and to the right. But mostly I want to welcome you to this space, and I want to say how much we love our partnership with Vroman's books. So can we just give it up for Vroman? Vroman's, what we love about Vroman's, particularly because it's a place to get books that doesn't begin with A and end with N, is that we have a similar mission, which is about pushing the limits of the imagination. That we are about imagining worlds that aren't what they are now, but what can be. That's why the books that you're hearing about tonight are so amazing. And what I want to tell you is, you may not be someone who ever has a desire or wants to find yourself to come into a church on Sunday morning, and that's fine. If you do, we have services at 7:30 and 10. We love that. And we can still share a mission of imagining new worlds. Worlds that are free from poverty and homelessness, worlds free from homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, worlds that are free from everything that binds us, where every one of us is free to be an artist, a creator, who we are and who we are becoming. And so if that's you, or if that's an organization that you belong with, then we want to partner with you too. And I hope that you will come out of this place tonight not just with a great signed book and wonderful inspiration, but knowledge that in both Vroman's and All Saints Church, you have partners in imagination. And I'm deeply grateful to see this crowded room tonight, because what this world needs is more people who can dream a new world into being. And so thank you very much. Have a wonderful time. Things are going to get going in just a few minutes. And please enjoy your stay at All Saints Church in Helmet. Thanks.
Tonight, on behalf of Vroman Bookstore, I want to welcome you to our author event with Cassandra Clare in conversation with Kiersten White discussing Swordcatcher. Yes, definitely applause. Yeah. We have more great events coming up, so for more information about those and our store, please visit our website, subscribe to our newsletters, and follow us on social media. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. First, please take a moment to silence your phones so there are no interruptions. Also, thank you for your ticket purchase tonight. It supports this great author and helps our bookstore continue to present these great events. Vroman is 129 years old this year, and I've been there the whole time. And it's the support from patrons like you that will keep us around for another century and change. As I said before, the signing will follow, and if you don't stay, you can go ahead and get up and leave. If you are planning on staying for the signing portion, please make sure to stay seated, and we will release you row by row and go over the rules again. Now, on to our guests. Kiersten White is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Camelot Rising and I Darken and Paranormal series and many more novels. She is also the author of the Sinister Summer series for middle grade readers. She lives with her family near the ocean in San Diego, which, in spite of its perfection, spurs her to dream of faraway places and even further away times. She will be in conversation with Cassandra Clare. She is the author of the #1 New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and Publishers Weekly bestselling Shadowhunters Chronicles. She is also the co-author with Paul Black of the bestselling fantasy series Magisterium. The Shadowhunters Chronicles have been adapted as both a major motion picture and a television series. Her books have more than 50 million copies in print worldwide and have been translated into more than 35 languages. Cassandra lives in Western Massachusetts with her husband and 3 fearsome cats. They are here tonight discussing Cassandra's new book, Swordcatcher. Vroman's patrons, please welcome Kiersten White and Cassandra Clare.
lots of notes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. There's
Yes.
an on button.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I, like all of you, am very excited because Cassandra Clare had my heart the moment Jce walked onto the page. I was like, okay, I'll follow you anywhere. And I'm really, really excited tonight because we get to follow Cassie to a new place, a new series, a new genre of storytelling, and I found it thrilling. I'm super, super excited to get to talk to you about it. So, hey, hi. I'm Kiersten. Okay, so first of all, I don't need to introduce Cassie, but she might have been introduced. You already know who she is. I want to know how you went about building a new world, because you've spent a lot of time in the Shadowhunters series. You've covered that, historical, modern day, all sorts of different types of world building within that, but this time you built a new world from the ground up. And I want to know, was that intimidating? Was it exciting? What was the process like?
I mean, I think it was both. It was intimidating and it was exciting. And also I went into it with this whole idea of this world and how it would work and this very grandiose vision. And then as soon as I actually sat down to write it, I was like, oh my God, none of this makes any sense. And I've never done anything like this before. Shadowhunters is contemporary fantasy, so is Magisterium. They're both magical worlds that are hidden within our own recognizable world, and so to create a world that has no connection to our world at all was something I'd never done before. And so there was a whole period where I was just like, what am I doing? I've never done this. I'm trying to kind of find my way there. And I ended up experimenting with a whole bunch of different kinds of sort of world building exercises and tropes and practices and whatnot. And then there was one day where it just sort of all fell together, and I was like, now I get it, and I know how this world works, and I feel like I can see it.
One of my favorite things about fantasy when it's done well is that it feels like a world that exists and has existed for a long time. I feel like you do that so well in Swordcatcher, where not only is the city a character in and of itself, this amazing, complex, complicated city that you built, but also you weave in interstitials that talk about histories and tell stories. So you really made it feel like this is a world that has existed long before the story we're getting right now. Do you have, just selfishly, do you have all that history written out? Can I read it?
I do have it written out. I feel like it'd be very boring to read it.
I think you're underestimating me and yourself.
I think that, again, one of the things about building a world is that you need to know all of that history of how things were in order to know why they are now the way that they are in the present day, the story that you're telling. And that I had done to some extent with the Shadowhunters, so I sort of looked at what I'd done in terms of creating a past for the Shadowhunters and an origin story and all of that. And I remember that really early on in my career, before I published anything, I had this idea for a world that had once had magic and all of the magic had vanished. And I remember the first time I ever met Holly Black was at a signing the first ever signing she did, which was with Tamora Pearson. It was at a bookstore in New York called Books of Wonder. And I went, and apparently no one had told Holly that you shouldn't go anywhere with weirdos that come up to you at book signings and are like, wanna go get coffee? But no one told her that, so she went, we got coffee, and she was asked me if I was working on anything, and I said, oh, well, I had this idea for this, book about a world where there was magic, and now there's no magic. And she was like, do you have any characters, or a plot? And I was like, no. And she was like, do they have ideas? And I was like, oh, I have this idea for a group of demon hunters who use tattoo magic, and so she was like, do that one. So I sort of put that idea away, and then it wasn't until I had the idea for the main characters that I was like, that's the world they live in. And once I paired those things up together, I was like, wow, now I finally have it's true, with a setting, you only have a setting, and it isn't until you have the people that you have the story.
Yeah. Well, I love that. That's such a good example for any aspiring writers out there. Sometimes it can feel like if an idea is not working now, you've somehow failed. But you have it, you're just tucking it away, and eventually you'll hit on the right combination of things for that idea. Okay, so speaking of your characters, you were working with a really large cast of this book. But I loved them all. I actually, one of my questions later is going to be whether or not the sword catcher is single. Not the sword catcher, the rat catcher.
The rat picker kid?
Rat picker kid.
He is
Yes.
single.
It's
But we
just-
know that's sort of. We'll talk about that later. It's complicated.
Yes. This is why I can't write fantasy, because I can't even remember my own children's names, much less the names of my own characters, much less fantasies. Which is why we have notes. But, so what was it like developing this really large cast? Were any of them trickier for you to get a handle on? Because I feel like they're all really distinctive and intriguing. And I always, as a writer, I always want to know, like, who gave you the hardest time?
I felt like this was a bunch of people who were all had more than one identity. You know, I think one of the themes of the book is identity and like who are you really? And I think so for me, the people it was hardest to get a handle on. So one of the characters, her name is Antonetta Elaine, and she is the daughter of very rich noble, of which there are 12 sort of ruling nobles that rule the city. She's the daughter of the silk merchants. So she seems to be this kind of ditzy girl who says kind of empty-headed things and makes silly comments, but she's actually not like that at all. I would say Antonetta is one of the most ruthless characters that I have written, and she has a very determined will, and all of the stuff that she's doing is this sort of pretense and put on that is meant to disarm people and trick them into thinking that she is unthreatening, that they don't need to worry about her, that, you know, that she's not something to contend with. And I think writing her was very complicated because she's two people. You know, she is the person she seems to be, and then the person that she actually is.
So I realize we've gotten ahead of ourselves, because I'm like, let's talk about the book, but we should probably talk about the book a little bit more broadly. Because as you're talking about Antonetta, I'm so excited for the sequel and to get to know her character even better because I find her so intriguing. You've got a really intriguing setup with this book in general, the premise being that one of your main characters is the sword catcher. So he's a young man who was picked as a child for his similarities to the Crown Prince and put into the Crown Prince's life to essentially take a sword for him. At some point in the future, Kel will die for Con. And first of all, I love that book so much. But could you talk a little bit just about the basic premise of the book, about Castellane, about Kel, and about then your two main characters?
Sure. So, basic premise of the world, there's the city, Castellane. We never leave it in this book. Everything takes place within the city-state of Castellane. And it is a place that is, we often say geography is destiny when we're talking about world building, because where you place your magical world or your magical city tells you a lot about what that world has to be like. I mean, think of Dune. You're on a desert planet. There's so much in that book that's just about getting water, having water, you know how all of that stuff works, and it guides everything the characters do. So in this case, they're a city that's between a bunch of mountains and the ocean. There's no land, really, so you can't grow crops, you can't have animals. You have to make your money from trade. So they are this very wealthy city that makes all of its money from sort of trading goods back and forth. And so that was the idea that I had for the setting, and then, like I said before, I had sort of, an idea for the premise of how the magic worked and the world, but no characters. And then I was watching one of my favorite terrible reality shows called Locked Up Abroad, which is mostly about Americans who have tried to smuggle drugs or exotic animals over some kind of border, and then they get arrested and thrown in jail for having 10,000 pangolins in their luggage. And I don't know why I find this really fascinating. I'm just like, ooh, yeah, that's what happens. And then you go to jail, and then you have to escape from jail. So I was watching an episode, and it had a very different structure. It was about a guy who had been in the Iraqi army, and he was pulled out of the army to serve as the body double for Saddam Hussein's son, Uday. And he was given plastic surgery so he would look like Uday, and he was given all this training so he could talk like him and walk like him and act like him. And they sent him out to do things like give speeches and give out medals, and any kind of public event that Uday would have to attend, he would attend for him because there was such a high risk of assassination. Needless to say, he did not enjoy this job, and he really hated Uday, since most of the episode was about how he kept trying to run away. And then he would return him, and then he would try to run away, and then he would return him. And I thought, wow, something about that really sparked my interest, and I started to go down the rabbit hole of researching the history of body doubles through the ages, and it turned out there have been body doubles for all sorts of infamous dictators, all sorts of kings. Back to the Roman Empire, they used someone standing in for this person who is in danger of assassination. And I thought, well, what if, unlike the guy who Locked Up Abroad, who hated Uday Hussein, what if you loved that person? What if you had grown up with that person since you were a child? And your true belief was that your job was to die for that person, but that was right, that was your duty. And that was sort of the spark idea for Connor and for Kel, and I was just interested in that relationship, and also in the idea of identity, because Kel has no identity. Everyone is either pretending to be Connor, or he's pretending to be Connor's cousin, this guy who hangs around with Connor all the time. But no one ever calls him by his real name. No one acknowledges who he really is or his real past until the Ragpicker King comes along. And so there's something I think very seductive in, for Kel, the idea of a world where people actually will interact with him as him instead of someone he's pretending to be. And then Lynn came out of my interest in sort of Jewish history. And she is a doctor, she's a physician, and I've always been sort of interested in the sort of history of medicine and whatnot. So she is a young woman who is a member of this group of people called the Ashkar, who are a minority religion in Castellane. They live behind walls, and they have to wear certain clothes and identify themselves as Ashkar. But because she is this very skilled physician, she is able to sort of go out in the city and sort of pass between her culture and the majority culture. And she gets pulled into the story of the sword catcher and of the palace when she's called to the palace because of her skills as a physician to save Cal's life.
It's so good, guys. If you've already read it, you know that I don't have to tell you, but it's so good. I'm so excited about you too. Okay, so I have a really more in-depth question for you. It's kind of more on the technical side. How did you feel, because this is your first adult novel, and that's always a weird thing to say, like when you're like, I wrote an adult novel, people are like, what? You're not that good.
I know, they're usually like so sexy, and you're like, oh, they're mean.
No, but your career has been up until now in middle grade and in young adult, and this is your first official adult novel. So I'm curious, having recently done the same thing myself, like did you approach it differently? Did it feel different writing? Or was it really just, it for this story, having an older cast of characters was what it called for? Do you want me to
I don't think I realized it was an adult novel when I first started it. I thought it was a YA project, and I started working on it. And as I was working on it, I realized that these characters were just older than the characters that I usually write. That there was no way that Lynn had gone through 6 years of magical medical school and was only 16 years old. It started when she was 10. And, that Kel's sort of where he was with his identity with Connor wouldn't make sense for someone who was younger, but it did make sense for someone who was older and was starting to think, like, what is my adulthood? What is my life if all that my only purpose is to die for somebody else? And I knew Connor had to be older. There's a lot of plot stuff that has to do with him getting married and political alliances. And I was like, there's no way these people are YA age. So if they're older, then the book is older and it's more adult. And the concerns of the people in the book just seem to me to be more adult. So I realized as I was working on it, like, oh, this is an adult book. And so, yeah, I think it was a little bit scary because I thought I'd never done this before, but it sort of told me it was an adult project rather than the other way around.
I found one thing that I feel emotionally is different writing for young readers versus adults. When you're writing, you know a lot of your audience is adults, and we love our adult readers. But also, your characters are teenagers, and there has to be that sort of core of hope. Whereas I feel like if you have older characters, you can do really terrible things, and we did a really terrible thing in this book. We're not going to talk about it, but
Sneak attack.
wow.
I also feel like it could be really morally gray.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed that about Swordcatcher. Like, these people are, the Shadowhunters are mostly fairly good people. Like, they have a pretty strong moral code. And most of them are people who would would give up their lives for other people, would give up their lives to save the world. They're generally, you know, I mean, all the Shadowhunters, but the ones that are focused on in the story are I think, pretty good people. And I would not say the same about the people at Swordcatcher. I mean, there's a big cast of people, and they all fall somewhere on the spectrum of good to evil to just very shady. And, you know, Connor is a good example. He does all sorts of things that are pretty morally, yeah. He makes a lot of terrible decisions because that's just how he is. I mean, I love Connor. I'm not insulting him. He just is a person who makes literally terrible decisions. You know, they drink, they party, they have a lot of sex, they do a lot of things that are kind of, they do a lot of betraying of each other, a lot of lying, a lot of backstabbing and backstabbing, the worst kind of stabbing. And, you know, I was like, it's kind of interesting to be able to play with that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I love that. I love, like you were saying, I felt like there was so much complexity in these characters. Like Connor, I love Connor as a character, but he does some really messed up nonsense in this book. And like, I love that you got to go there and you got to really lean into that and explore that. It's so good. I'm just gonna keep saying that. Okay, so I have a slight side note because you know I follow you online. That's not creepy. You should also follow her online. You just announced a Kickstarter, and I would love to hear more about that.
So I just announced a Kickstarter project. Some of you who follow me may know that during the pandemic I decided to write a novel online and update it once a week. And it was called Secrets of Blackthorn Hall. It was about how Emma and Julian from the Dark Artifices inherit large falling down mansion near London, and they have to put it back together and get it, you know, in a state where somebody could actually live in it. And as they do that, they start uncovering all of these secrets that sort of connect back to the characters from the Infernal Devices in the last hours. And it was a lot of fun. It was sort of a multimedia project. I got to do things with pictures and audio and all this stuff. And then when I was done with it, people started to say, well, will this be a book, like a published book? And I thought, you know, it's kind of a weird thing for a regular publisher. Technically, I've already released it, but I understand the desire to have a physical book and not, you know, read a whole book backwards on Tumblr because that is not that much fun as an experience. So I decided to do to crowdfund to you know, raise enough money to publish the book, and then because it's me and I always overcomplicate things, I was like, let's do this. I want to do this project. We're going to call it Seasons of Shadowhunters, and so there's going to be 4 books, and every season people will be able to do books. So there's a book of 10 short stories. They're all original and new. They're about sort of fan favorite, like Shadowhunter couples. And there's a set of 4 novellas, and there's a reprint of the, I don't know if any of you have seen it, but Cassandra Clare, who's an artist I work with a lot, did a whole set of cards, flower cards for all the different characters. And we did publish it back in 2014, but there have been so many new characters and so much new information that it's going to be updated with all the new characters and sort of old information corrected and new information added. So, yeah, it's, you can find it online at shadowhunter.army, and it's going to go live as of the end of October, beginning of November. And I'm hoping that we are able to fund the project so that we can do the mailing of these 4 books, and it will go through 2024, so people will get a book every season.
And it's so nice because there's a little book out in Shadowhunter stories.
Right, I was thinking,
This
is, you know, we have a gap between Last Hours and Wicked Powers, and so this is one way to actually have new content.
See, I like talking to you because you make me feel like my workload is so reasonable.
I know. I was like, I'm gonna do this Kickstarter, and my husband's like, okay, that seems reasonable. I was like, I'm gonna write these 2 new books, and he was like, oh man.
Yeah. See, I just use you as an example now. When people are like, why are you doing so much of this? And I'm like, Cassie's doing more. Okay, so I'm not gonna ask you spoilery questions like, how could you? And what is up with that guy? Because I really want to talk to you about a certain guy. But so I feel like it's not a spoiler if you've already read the book, and you did say that the first book takes place entirely in Castellane. I'm really curious because we have other countries that have their own culture and their own like attitudes and their own intrigues. Are we going to leave Castellane in book 2 and see more of the world? Is that too big a spoiler?
No, I don't think it's a big spoiler. We do not leave Castellane in book 2. The hope for the series is that it will be 4 books, and that we will leave Castellane in book 3. But the book 2 is more of a mystery structure. There's a big crime that's committed at the end of book 1, and I don't think that's a spoiler because, you know, it's a, whatever. It's a crime. I'm not going to tell you what kind of crime. Could have been mail fraud. We don't know. And so all of the characters that we have met are sort of have to join together in the second book to figure out who's responsible for this particular crime. So it's more of a mystery structure, which is fun to do in a fantasy city.
Now I'm just imagining the characters of the Milford Inspector and Castellane. Which, you know what, I read that.
Postal fraud?
Yeah, I would also read that. Okay, so now we're going to give you some lightning round questions. Because you do have one, your question that you submitted, and I really want to get to those also. But here are our quick questions. Oh, I already asked this. Is it Raptor being single, and can I have his number?
I'm going to say he's single. He's single. I mean, nobody has a telephone in Castellane, but everybody knows where to find the Raptor King.
Exactly.
And, you know, I think he needs love.
I think so too. So cool. Okay, which of the characters do you think would make the best Shadowhunter?
Ooh, that's a good question. Gian. She is the Raptor King's like right-hand woman. She is an incredibly skilled assassin. She's like, you know, I can kill you with a fork and a rubber band, and I feel like that's a good quality for a Shadowhunter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You have to pick a character to cat sit your amazingly beautiful cats for the rest of your tour. Who do you choose? And if it's Connor, I will judge you.
Now I would never put Connor in charge of a living creature. He doesn't like cats. He likes cats, but he's not the person you want to like leave in charge.
He is a cat. He does it just and wander away.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we get work and wander off. Who's the most responsible person? Look, man, there's not a lot of responsible people. I think Lynn. I think she would absolutely show up. You know, I mean, she does rounds. You know, she visits her patients in the city and she dispenses medicine. And I'm just like, well, she's a doctor. She's responsible.
And Mary would help her.
Mary would help her.
Yeah, I love Mary. Okay. My next question is similar. It's why is Lynn the best?
I think it's the best because she's really determined. Like she is, sort of ruthlessly determined under all of her like practicality. I also like that she's extremely practical. She wants to get done what needs to get done. She's very blunt. She's very truthful. But she also is absolutely willing to do. Her friend Marion is dying of a disease that Lynn does not know how to cure, and she believes that if she learns more about magic, which is forbidden to learn, maybe she'll be able to figure out a spell that can cure Marion. At the end of the book, she has to make a truly crazy decision in order to basically be able to access the magic that she needs to access, and she goes ahead and does it. A thing that will append everything that she knows about the world and everything that her whole community believes. So I was like, I do like this about her, that she's willing to go this far.
I was very shocked at that reference. But I loved it because you went there, and it sets up the book in such an interesting way. And that's what I love about Lynn's character too, is she's raised in such a specific community, and she loves her community, but she also recognizes its flaws. And Jce gets it, which, you know, I love a female character. Okay, so what is your dream writing day? Like, describe your ideal writing day. In a world where there are no deadlines, and no cats eating antibiotics, and
What? Oh, no, sorry, I thought you said cats eating antibiotics.
no, needing antibiotics.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You have nothing else on your plate, no other responsibilities. What is your dream writing day?
I feel like if you told me that I had no deadlines and no responsibilities, I would not spend the day writing. I would spend my days scrolling around. So, leaving that aside as a possibility, I would like to be in a beautiful place. I would like to be with my friends. I'd like to be able to see a pretty view. And at the end of the day, I would like to get together with my friends and talk about what we worked on that day and what we're going to work on the next day. And work through any knotty problems we have. I love talking about writing, and I like writing it's very hard to explain unless people are also writers. It's very hard to explain the problems you have, why you have the problems you have, why they're intractable or tractable, and how you might solve them.
Yeah. So if you are a writer, make the writer friends. It will
Yeah.
make all the difference. Okay.
Reader questions, all right.
We are going to reader questions. And I'm going to use first person, but I didn't actually ask this. I noticed there was a parallel moment between Kel and Connor with Claire Rackeyes, Will/Jen, and Jce/Alec. Was that on purpose? I guess we read that scene.
Yes, that was on purpose. I do think of Kel and Connor as having a somewhat Karabatai-like relationship, and it is a bond that is stronger than a familial bond or a friendship bond. It passes into the realm of a magical bond. Kel is truly sort of magically bonded to Connor, and they're bonded to each other. And I also think of Kel as the reason that Connor is a better person than he would otherwise be. Like, he is definitely a person who wobbles between being a unbearable person and being a great person, and all of the stuff that I think about him that is great about him is because of Kel.
Yeah. I love their relationship, and I love how it's genuine love and genuine brotherhood, but it's also messy and complicated and
Right.
hurtful, but also really nurturing and supportive.
I mean, they truly do love each other, but neither of them have, I think, fully interrogated the idea that Kel's job is to die for Connor, and there's no real way around that.
Yeah, that's a tough.
It's a tough one for friends.
Yeah. I mean, if you ever see that in a job ad, don't take that job.
And love to die for your boss.
Okay. This next question, which again I did not submit. How did you find such an amazing group of writers to collab with? And they did go on some pretty amazing writing retreats.
I really think Kristen may have written this. As she is one of my friends.
And
It was
they're
all
all
beyond
so
my
attractive.
I don't know. I mean, I've been very lucky. Holly was my friend from before I was published. And through her, I met a bunch of other people who became sort of my constant writer team. Rob Monsterman, who's here somewhere, but probably hiding, and Maureen Johnson, and V. Bardugo joined us on a writing retreat in 2013, and then we never let her go. We liked her. And so, yeah, it was just sort of writing retreats are sort of like, we'll take a month and we'll go somewhere. We'll rent a house in usually another country, and we'll all sort of get together and go to that place, and we'll work all day, and then at night we'll talk about the work that we did. And there's always people there to help you when you're stuck, and there's always people to talk to about the work that you're doing. So I just feel like over the many years, we sort of, it's like a Katamari. You roll along and you like collect other writers, and when you meet them, you think this person seems nice, this person seems, low drama. I want them on a writing retreat. And yeah, I've been really lucky to have this group of writing friends that I can continuously sort of hit up and be like, all right, February, we're going to Mexico, we're gonna rent a house, who wants to come? And usually everybody wants to come for at least some amount of the time. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, people often ask for advice, and I'm always like, have other writers that are in your life that you can talk to, that you can show your work to, that are familiar with what you do, because they will help you make your book not a different book than it is, but the best book version of that book that it can be.
And it's also, it's a strange career, and it's a career that, a lot of people get over 1 or 2 books, but to stay in the career over a decade plus, it's unusual. And so that's what I really value in these relationships is, I love talking to you, I love getting your advice. I feel like you have done things particularly in a way that no one else has done. And so it means a lot to me to be able to have those connections too, because yeah, it's a weird job.
It's a very weird job, and people drop out for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. My favorite is still the author who was like at the peak of her career, and I was doing an event with her, and she's like, I haven't told my editor yet, but this is my last book. I don't like it. So I'm just gonna open a bakery. And I was like, that's good for you.
I mean, good for you, but you're also sort of like, why am I the only person you've told? I can't tell anyone. Oh no.
All right, cool. Are you opening a bakery? I'm not.
I would be very bad. I can't cook. I'm sure that's all the cooking.
Yeah, okay. So no bakeries here. You're good. All right. Why are the Herringales afraid of ducks?
What the heck? Who wrote this?
I think they're afraid of ducks because I'm afraid of ducks. And I think I'm afraid of ducks because I was in London doing research for Infernal Devices, and I was with my friend Sarah, and we had gone to get some like meat pies and bring them down to Hyde Park and eat by the river and kind of like, you know, there were a bunch of scenes in Infernal Devices that are in Hyde Park next to the Serpentine, and so I wanted to kind of see what it looked like, what it would be like to walk around there. And we, you know, ate some of our food, and then there were these ducks, and we started to feed the ducks the pies, and then at some point Sarah turned to me and she said, "These are duck pies, we're feeding ducks to ducks." And I was like, "Oh no, cannibal ducks." Well, we can't have that. So we put away the pies, and the ducks saw that we were putting the pies away, and they became enraged, and they followed us. And they chased us quacking out of the park, and after that, I just had this real feeling of hostility for these ducks. And I incorporated that into the book.
And you left behind a group of ducks. That on the flash of their brother.
I know, I left behind a group of ducks who had walked to eat each other. I had no idea what happened. I never wanted to know.
Yeah, so now I'm afraid of ducks too.
Their business.
Yes. Alright, so when did you realize you wanted to write about this topic? What inspired you? And how much research did you have to do to write things this forward?
Oh, that's lovely. Well, I talked a little bit about sort of what gave me the idea for Swordcatcher, so I won't tell you again. It's true that this was the first idea that like was compelling enough to me to sort of put aside Shadowhunters for a little while and work on it. Like I had kind of always thought, okay, well, you need to do another project, you need to do another project. There was always another Shadowhunters book, there was always more to do, there was always more story in that world. And then this one came along and just started poking at me, you know, the way that happens. And so I thought, I'll just do a little outlining, I'll just do a little document that I can look at later when I have time, that, you know, and I broke it down into like the history, the story, the world, the characters, the magic, and at some point, one of my friends at the wrong writing retreat was like, "You are writing this book. You are pretending you're not writing this book, but you're writing this book, so you might as well just admit that you're writing it." So I think it's just the right idea at the right time, and you can't not write it.
This one's so cute. They have very nice handwriting. I love you have very nice handwriting. Good job. I'm such a mom. Please go. Hi, I just finished reading the book last night. I loved it. I was wondering how many books are going to be in this series, which you did say you hoped to be 4.
I don't know what will be 4.
But when can we expect book 2?
So Ragnar King comes out at the very beginning of 2025. So it's, I know that seems like a long way away, we're actually at the end of 2023, so it's like 13 months, something like that. Yeah, it's a little bit more than that.
And when can I expect that to be emailed to me?
We'll have to have that conversation later.
So mean. So I first heard about this book actually at a writing retreat, and Cassie already had the cover, so I assumed it was like imminent, and I was like, great, when can I get a copy? And she's like, no. It's like we got like 2 years, and I was like,
I know, we really had the cover like years before.
I was so excited. I was like, I'm gonna go back and email my publicist and get a copy right now. And you're like, yeah, you can't. I have some experience in you. This is a good one. From Valerie. How do you handle criticism and not let it stop you or create writer's block?
Ooh, I think we could both address that. I mean, it is hard, and I think, you know, you want to be a little bit careful. Like, I generally sort of advise people against like going online and reading all the reviews, because there are always going to be people for whom your book is not the book. You know, there are always going to be people who don't like it. One thing that is kind of fun is to find a book that you think is like the greatest book ever written, the most perfect book, and then go on like Goodreads and read all the 1-star reviews of that. And like I enjoy the 1-star reviews of Pride and Prejudice. This is boring. This book is so stupid. This book reads like it was written by someone who never had sex.
What the hell is this?
You know, you 1-star Pride and Prejudice. There's no way anyone's like it at Escape, right? So that I think is vaguely comforting, because it reminds you that there's no book that's for everybody. There's always going to be people who like don't like it, or you know, don't want to, you know, engage with it, or they bounce off it, or whatever, or their Jce reminds them of their ex-boyfriend. And I think otherwise otherwise you do want to do a little bit of self-protection. Critique is super important, and you want to take critique from people that you trust. Your editor gives you critique, your critique partners give you critique, and that you want to take and incorporate, but critique is different from criticism. When I think of criticism as being from other readers, it says like, this book, I like this book for these reasons, you should read this book. It's not for the author, it's not for you to read. It's you want to leave those people alone, let them have their conversations, you don't want to interfere, but it's also, it's neither the praise nor the critique is for you.
I will say as a side note, if any of you did have that reaction that Jace reminds me of your ex-boyfriend, there are probably a lot of people in this room who would like to meet your ex-boyfriend. So if you meet after and just pass out that information, that'd be really nice.
I have gotten that review, and I was like, wow, I mean, I can't, okay.
And I think you're exactly right, that not every book is for every person. One of my favorite things to do is to look at reviews, and you'll have a 5-star review that says, I love this book, the characters were all so well developed and felt like real people, right next to a 2-star review that says, I hated this book, the characters were super flat and felt like cardboard cutouts. And you're like, oh, cool.
These things can both be true, because this is such a subjective thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think especially when you're writing, when you're drafting, it needs to be really protected and really nurture the thing that you love about that idea, right? Because that's what's driving you, that's what you're going to keep coming back to when you do get writer's block, or when the writing gets hard, you can remind yourself, I love this thing about this book. This is what I'm writing the book right now, and kind of leave those outside voices aside. Because to start out with, we're always writing for our books for ourselves, right? To entertain ourselves, because we're very easily bored, apparently.
I mean, we know what we like. I like complicated relationships, I like a lot of pain, I like sudden surprises that come out of nowhere and punch you right in the face, and that's not your thing. I don't know, that's cool.
My most recent book, Mr. Magic, is just a fun time about the childhood cast of a television show reunited 30 years later, and lots of fun, scary things, and religious trauma, which apparently I really like spending hundreds of pages reliving. I promise it's fun.
Yes, religious trauma is always what I think of when I think escapist, good time.
Studying the fun in fundamentalist ex-religions. Next question. This is also by Poetry. Do you draw straws to choose your retreat locations with your fellow friend authors?
It depends. Generally, who's ever holding the retreat, who's the person who's like, all right, everybody, I want to have a retreat at this time, is the person who picks the place. So it's often me, because one of the things I do to relax when I'm stressed out is go online and look for writing retreat houses. I'm like, ooh, that would be fun, ooh, that would be fun, ooh, that would be fun. So basically, you do have to be like, I want to go here. Does everybody agree? Are we all into it? Do we want to do this? But and we try not to repeat.
I think you could also too, if that's something that you're interested in doing with writer friends, like I go to my best friend's house and we do writer retreats at her house. Sometimes if I'm really desperate, I will get a hotel room really close to my house and just go sit alone and sad.
I think a writer retreat is about getting away from your normal routine and kind of pulling yourself out of your daily stuff. Because we all know how to distract ourselves so well at home, and we all know how to procrastinate at home, and so pulling yourself out of that, putting yourself in another place where you're just supposed to be writing is really helpful.
All right, so this question is from Victoria. They ask, will we ever get more extended adult intimate scenes from the Shadowhunter books on Tumblr?
That was a bad time to be drinking water. Is it on Tumblr? Does the porn have to be on Tumblr? Does it matter where it's located? I don't know. I'm asking the person who asked the question.
It was me.
So do you care where it goes?
No, I was just curious.
Just curious.
I'm very used to
What?
me. I know.
I know when I sort of stopped using Tumblr because it gave
Right.
this interface that I was having a lot of difficulty using. So I was like, I don't know if I want to put my porn on Tumblr. Well, the book that I was talking about, the 10 short stories, I was going to make a little more spicy than we usually see in Shadowhunter books, because I was like, hey, I'm publishing this myself, I can kind of do what I want. So that's fun. So that should be fun. And then, I feel like there's always sort of outtakes and things like that. So when we, get Wicked Powers, there may definitely be extra scenes and stuff. And if I don't post them on Tumblr, then I will post them on my website and kind of point you where you can read them.
You can also just text me.
I was over at my friend Kelly's house and her 14-year-old daughter came to me. She's like, I really like those sex scenes. And I was like, I know you know Kelly, so and Ursula. You guys have a picture of her saying this? She's very like straightforward. She's like, I really like those sex scenes. They were good. I could use more explicit sex. I was like, turn it off. They grow up so fast. Oh no, yeah, she's gone on into erotic Minecraft fan fiction. I mixed up Minecraft and Minesweeper, so I was like, they're writing erotic stories out of those little blocks. Clearly not have my finger on the pulse.
Yeah, Red 3 showed up and I just couldn't contain myself anymore. Things get explosive.
I got children.
Alright, well now I just want to write erotic Minesweeper.
I challenge you.
Okay. I love you so much. Okay. So this is the opposite question that I asked. So this was on which Shadowhunter character would fit best in the Swordcatcher world.
I thought about that. I actually think probably Jce, because I feel like he's fairly, he's good with a sword and you need to be in Castellane. And he's fairly unflappable, and the nobles of Castellane lead these lives of extreme, like, debauchery. They're always having these incredibly, like, debauched and lecherous parties, with all sorts of weird nudity and sex and, like, plays about the history of Castellane that are all basically sex and whatnot. And I feel like he would be like, okay, I think some of the Shadowhunter characters would be like, I'm not cool with this, but I feel like Jce would be like, this doesn't bother me.
It's educational.
I'm just going to be so bothered by much.
So this question is, who are the new characters of your upcoming series for Wicked Powers?
So Wicked Powers focuses on
that's my question.
I hope that you will be, because otherwise it's not going to make a lot of sense. It kind of continues the story as it ended in Beginner in Darkness, but the main characters, or 3 years later, so the main characters are Kit Herondale, Ty Blackthorn, Drew Blackthorn, and then we have a few other characters who we've either seen before or don't know yet, but we will know them. So Drew's roommate Thais is a significant character. Jaime Rosales, who we met in Dark Artifice, is a significant character. And Ash Morningstar, who is the son of Sebastian and the Sealy Queen, is a very significant character. And there's a lot of sort of, both he and Kit technically kind of have a claim to the throne of fairies, so there's a lot of politics back and forth. Oh no.
How did you think readers are going to react when you announced in the Shadowhunter series that Clary and Jce were siblings?
I mean, badly. I assume they would react badly. I was trying to think of something that was so awful that there was no way that anybody could possibly think these people would ever live together. Because I really either love that is impossible or love that is forbidden. And I felt like I read a lot of books where, the forbidden love was forbidden, and to me it did not feel like the reason was particularly solid. I was like, if you really love someone and someone's like, well, you can't get together because, your families don't like each other, or you're second cousins, or whatever. I was like, you're gonna probably, well, I don't know, second cousin's a little gross, but, your families don't like each other, or you're different religions, or, whatever, I was like, no, I just feel like this isn't enough. It's not compelling enough. Like, what's something so horrible that if two people found out about each other, they really would be like, we can't be together. And so that's what I thought. I had been watching, again, a documentary, which clearly I should stop doing, that was about people it was about this couple who had gone in for genetic testing when, after they got married, they wanted a baby, they went for genetic testing, discovered they were brother and sister, they'd been adopted out to different families, and I thought, holy crap, this is like the worst thing that you could find out. It's so terrible, and it fills you with such immense, guilt, and there's this revulsion, but there's also the fact that you do still love the other person. And I was like, this seems like a lot of the fun stuff that writers like to play with. I'm not even related, so I was like, all right, you know, I have this for a book and a half. But indeed, I remember Holly was teaching a class, a writing class. There was a girl in class, they were talking about, you know, twists in books, and she was like, I read this book, and this twist at the end, I really hated it. This couple, I was really shipping them, and they turned out to be brother and sister. And I was like, I'm not related. And the girl leaped up and ran out of the room. Apparently, she went to my city of Angeles. I was like, thank you. I guess you can't go around telling everybody, but. So yes, I still feel like that badly. It was a big risk. It was my first ever book. And I remember being like, this is a really big risk to take at the end of this book because so many people are going to be like, this couple is, this can't happen. This can't happen. And there are going to be people who are like, you're not really going to do that. Something else is going to happen. They're not really related or something's going to change. And, you know, I had to bet on those people that they would do it.
Or you had those very cute Luke and Leia shippers who were like, finally.
I know. I did get a really bad review from someone who was like, I thought I finally got the incest book and there's no incest in it. And I was like, always ever happy.
Yeah, exactly. Criticism. You never make everyone happy. So this is your last question. I actually think it's a really great one to end on. Could you share a bit of the story of how you started your writing journey and when you knew that writing was your path, and maybe some thoughts or advice for aspiring young writers?
Okay, so I always wanted to be a writer, and I can't remember a time I didn't want to be a writer, but I don't think I wrote anything down until my dad gave me a Mac Classic, which would barely be recognizable, I think, as a computer to most of you. And I was like, wait, I can type things out and then I can go back and change them. And that was like this revelation that I could like edit. And so I started writing a book in installments, which was called The Beautiful Cassandra. It was about, which you may have seen a version of in The Beautiful Cordelia in Lost Hours, because I was like, Lucy is writing basically the same book I wrote, which was about a girl in the 17th century, not that I knew anything about the 17th century at all, I knew zero, but I liked the idea of clothes and the idea of it, who falls in love with a young man who her father does not want her to be with because he is a bandit, and that's not a good career. So they fall in love and they run off together to do bandit stuff, and this is all like the first 15 pages of the book. And then they kiss, and then I wasn't really sure what happened after that, and I was like,
You needed to find your own
I was
number.
not clear. Yeah, I was not fan fiction at that time, so I was highly unsure on what happened after the kissing, so I killed him. I was like, well. So I gave it to my friends, and they were like, well, it's good, you should write more. Like, what happens after he dies? And I was like, I guess she meets some other guy. So Cassandra wanders through the world, meeting different guys, then they kiss, and then the guy dies. Found increasingly elaborate ways to kill them. This was eventually like 1,000 pages long. And she was like, I think I eventually stopped when she had joined a rock band because I had really left the whole 17th century concept behind. And she was dating all the different people in the band and they were all dying. So the other was so bad. But I think, honestly, they were a band that kept changing their name. And only way later I was like, wait, Simon's band. Simon's band is that band. That band that keeps changing their name. Like, it's funny, the things that stick in your head from really early days. And but I kept writing. I wrote a bad Arthurian novel, and a bad vampire novel, and a bad like mystery novel, and I wrote a lot of bad novels. And I think just all of the practice and all the writing and all of this and all of that. And I remember getting to college and actually being called into a creative writing class. And I remember then it was one of those things where you have the class, you're supposed to turn in a story, then you're going to look at the stories the next week. Everyone turned in a story about being depressed or seeing a homeless person and it making them realize things about their lives. And I turned into a story about a serial killer.
Was it Cassandra? Because she sounded like a serial killer.
I mean, I assume there's like a unified theory of the beautiful Cassandra when she's actually murdering all these guys, but I turned a story about a serial killer and a girl who was in love with him, even though though, despite his serial killing ways. And my teacher came up to me and he was like, "This is great. I really enjoyed it. Keep going." And so, like, I feel like, you know, the encouragement kept me writing. And and City Bones was my first book, the novel that I ever finished. Oh, advice to young writers. I guess I would say, I think it was the most helpful to me when, in terms of becoming a writer, was reading a lot. And I know that sounds simplistic, but I feel like you want to read outside of your comfort zone. I think a lot of us are drawn to, you know, we like a kind of book or a writer, and we want to read all of that work or that writer's work, or then we expand out to work that's like that. And when I started pushing myself into reading things that I didn't know if I was going to like them or not, I learned a huge amount, because once you push outside of a specific genre, a specific kind of writing, you know, you push into noir, you push into mystery, you push into, you know, literature, poetry, you learn all of this stuff that you're going to learn one skill set from one kind of book, but a lot wider skill set from a lot of books. And so I encourage you to read books that you don't think you're going to like. I don't know. It seems like hard advice, but it's actually a way that you will find things that you will really love. So, good luck. And thank you. Thank you all for coming.
All right.
Don't worry, we'll get you right up, set up right up there. One more time for Kiersten White and Cassandra Clare, give us just a moment while we reset the stage here and get to clear some of this stuff off. If you are not staying for the signing, you can go. But if you are, please stay seated, and we will release kind of row by row, section by section. It's not a perfect method, but it should be okay. Thanks again.